We're on the shores of Lake Superior. And we're not fishing, we're not sightseeing, we're looking for gold.
Once we've got the dirt collected, we'll run it through the sluice, which is lined with a ribbed rubber mat. And that mat will allow the heavier material, specifically the gold, to settle out into the bottom of those ribs.
Then we'll join in with a group of guys at bird camp.
Yeah, that's a good girl. Yeah, good girl.
9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. The Upper Peninsula might not be the first place you think of when talking about prospecting for gold, but indeed it's here. Gold that has been pulverized by glaciers unpredictably washes up on the shores of Lake Superior in varying degrees and locations. In 2009, the DNR passed new rules allowing individuals to prospect for gold on state-owned lands on a recreational basis.
So when we start out looking for the gold, we'll do a few sample pans to see what kind of dirt we've got. And to pan it, you're simply classifying the material by weight, because the gold's so much heavier than everything else. Even though it's extremely small, it will tend to settle to the bottom of the pan. So as we classify the material, we'll then slough the lighter material off the top, and that will get us down to our concentrated material. We always pan into a little tub so we're not using the lake, and so that if we accidentally tip the pan, we don't lose any gold we may have collected in there. And a lot of people, when they start panning, will tend to be very, very careful to not run any gold out. But from what I've found, there's no way to keep it all in the pan, but we try and keep as much as we can in there. There's a lot of videos you can watch online to learn how to pan. If you watch any of the prospecting shows, they'll tend to show you some pretty good techniques as well. You'll see when we classify this, the lighter white and yellow sand will come to the top, and that's a good indication that you're classifying it properly. That every time you do it, you'll see that lighter material come up to the surface. All of the gold that we get here along Lake Superior is glaciated gold that's come down from Canada. It's been pulverized by the glaciers for the last few millennia, so it's gotten crushed up and is quite small, but it's actually pretty plentiful. When we're looking for it here along the beach, we'll look into the black sands that you see which are actually a mixture of hematite, magnetite, and iron sand. And all of those heavier materials hold the gold. The gold's actually pretty transient here on the beach. The wave action can affect it day to day as to whether a spot's good one day and not so good the next. There's actually gold along most of the shore of Lake Superior. Some of the better concentrations, though, tend to run from the Two-Hearted River on the east to Grand Marais on the west. We've got one little speck in this pan, but that's an indication we're in the right spot. If we're pulling out pieces like this, and this is a small piece of gold. It's the size of about the size of a flour grain, but that's what we tend to get on the beach from the gold that's been pulverized by the glaciers. We found a little bit of gold with our test pan, so now we're going to bring our sluice down and see if we can get a little bit more. The setup we have is a recirculatory system to try to do our best to follow the regulations that the state of Michigan set We can't have a system that draws or pumps water directly into or out of Lake Superior. So we have a system set up here with a small commercial style sluice that runs a bilge pump out of a boat connected to a 12-volt battery. We collect all the tailings in the bucket so they don't gum the pump up, and then the water just recirculates through. Prospecting along the shore of Lake Superior, you'll want to look for the concentrates of black sand, mostly located between the Two-Hearted River and Grand Marais. There's plenty of places to access the beach and take a look for it. If you're going to be out prospecting, make sure you check with the DNR to make sure you're following all the regulations that they set forth. This end, if you see some of the reddish hue in it, it's the iron. And actually almost all of this black sand is a magnetite. And you can tell that as you're prospecting it, you can actually hold a magnet to it and the sand will stick right to the magnet. We're trying to just get this thin top layer for two reasons. One, so we don't disturb too much of the beach. And two, the black sand tends to be in layers only about a 1/4 inch deep. And then when you get down to the lighter sand that's underneath it, it won't hold the gold. One of our goals when we're prospecting like this is to make sure that we're as gentle on the beach as we can. We want to make sure everybody can come out and enjoy this. The rule I have is try to never do any more environmentally than a kid would building a sandcastle. And when we're done running these tailings, we'll actually replace the dirt from right where we got it. Once we've got the dirt collected, we'll run it through the sluice, which is lined with a ribbed rubber mat. And that mat will allow the heavier material, specifically the gold, to settle out into the bottom of those ribs. And it'll allow the lighter material, the sand, rock, and other quartz-based stuff that we don't want, to run down into the bucket, where we can then replace it right back onto the beach. And you kind of have to learn through trial and error based on the sluice that you have, amount of water flow that you have, how steep you need to set it, and how fast you can run the dirt through it. And it's all a experimentation process. There's no real good rule for it. You can run a small recirculating sluice. One of the most popular methods though, and the cheapest and easiest, is just to go out and pan. If you come out prospecting on Lake Superior, there isn't one hot spot to stay with. If you look along the beach with the wave action and the erosion, the beach can change from day to day, and so can the spots with the gold concentration. Whereas great one day may not be so great the next, and where you weren't finding any before, you might find a whole bunch the next time out. Last summer when my son and I were walking the beach looking for agates, we happened to cross a pretty good patch of the black sand. And when I looked at it and realized it was the heavier material, I told him I figured there might be some gold in it. And we both sort of laughed about it. Well, we got about 200 yards further down the beach, and there were 3 people with shovels and a couple sluices. And at that point it seemed more intriguing than humorous, so we met up with them later and saw what they had collected and realized it was a viable hobby and just a fun way to spend a day on the lake. At this point we're cleaning the mats out of the sluice after our first run of dirt, and hopefully this will be a little more concentrated material. Today wasn't our best collection day. We only found a few flecks. Sometimes when you're getting a little bit better dirt, this is the result you can get from about 10 gallons of beach dirt. Run that down to just a little bit of concentrates and there'll be a few hundred flecks of gold in there. They're all quite small, just flower grain size, but they add up and look nice in a little vial if you can show off to your friends. One of the rules the state sets is that you're only allowed a 1/4 ounce of gold per person per year. And I think even if you were out here every day, all day, during the summer, you'd never get there. So it's not something you'll ever get rich doing, but when you're on a lake shore like this, on a day like this, it really doesn't matter.
"906 Outdoors" is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours. It's time to make you hungry. Brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings.
So today we're going to be making candied brandy backstrap. First off, you want to cut up an onion. And I usually just cut it up into rough pieces because you just want the flavor of the onion, not the actual onion itself. You take that out before you put it on the grill. We're going to start off with 1/2 cup of brandy. Do a 1/2 cup of olive oil. 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. Grab some of our backstrap here. I just cut them in like bite-sized pieces. I like to put my garlic in on top of the meat. Then with the mustard, about 2 tablespoons light brown sugar. I usually do about a 1/2 cup. Put a black pepper in there, Italian, salt. And obviously you're gonna kind of change these with however much meat you have. I like to have it marinated for about 6 hours or so, 6 to 8 hours. The longer the better. Cover it up and put it in the fridge. So we'll go toss it on the grill. So we got the grill about like medium heat, around 300. I like to put them on top of the tin foil so they don't fall through the grates. Been there, done that. Put a little bit of honey on them, so it actually ends up caramelizing on them. And you close the lid, let them sit for a little bit, let them cook, and then come back in about 5 to 10 minutes. And just move it around. Make sure it doesn't stick to one spot. You can tell once they start getting ready, usually that's when all the liquid's gone. We'll let them cook a little bit longer in the honey and the liquid, and then we'll come back, pour more honey on them, and then they should be done. You can tell when they're done though, they start to get that nice caramelized crust on them. I like them crispy. Pull them off the grill here. The nice part about the tin foil too is it's easy cleanup. Candied brandy backstrap.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Race Driven, your source for premier power sports products. Traditions run deep in the UP, and probably none deeper than camp. Deer camp, bird camp, or just plain going to camp. I stopped in again this year for a visit with the crew at Camp Dunn Logging Days to see how their annual bird hunt was going. We got there just in time to tag along on a hunt. Hunting grouse and woodcock with dogs certainly adds an additional dimension to the sport. It's about as exciting watching the dogs work as it is getting a crack at a few birds. I talked with Rick Hansen of Camp 3 Shorthairs to get some pointers on what it takes to get started with hunting dogs.
Well, if somebody wants to get into grouse or woodcock hunting, there's so many, a variety of different dogs out there. My favorite is a pointing dog. I like watching them work in the woods and watching them point the birds. As far as getting a dog, you know, you can spend up to $500 up to $1,000 for a dog. I usually have a litter once every 2 years, and my friends have dogs, and we all have the pointing dogs, so that's the kind of breed that we like. Like I said, you can get any kind you want. You can train them yourself. How I train them is I read a lot of books, watch a lot of videos, and I basically do it behind my yard. For training dogs, it's 15-20 minutes every day, but you have to be consistent. You know, you have to do it every day. Sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days. If the dog, you know, isn't responding to what you're trying to do, you know, put it away and try again the next day. As far as hunting grouse and woodcock, my favorite bird is the woodcock for hunting dogs, for pointing dogs especially, because they hold so tight for a pointing dog where you can walk up behind a dog and sometimes you can see the woodcock sitting on the ground. Grouse, they tend to run and run and run. Sometimes a younger bird, you can get the dog pointing it, you know, and walk up behind it and flush it, but not very often. When that dog's going through the woods, it's smelling. It's trained to smell the scent of the bird. A woodcock sitting there has a cone of scent, and if it's sitting there for, you know, a day, an hour, 2 hours, it's going to be a good scent cone. The bird just landed there, the dog's not going to be able to pick that, find that scent as quick. But if the longer the bird's been sitting there, you're going to have good scent, and that dog will be able to find it and point it. When I train, I usually put, when they're puppies, I'll start them out and I'll put pigeons into the basket behind the house. And I'll put them in different locations. And I'll walk that dog up on a check cord into the wind. And once that dog senses that bird sitting, that pigeon sitting in that in the cage I have there for it, then I stop and it points it, and I'll, you know, soothe it and let it know it did a good job. And then I'll pick the dog up and I'll take it away and I'll go to the next one. I also have big post PVC pipe I put in the ground with a string on the top of it, so I can throw the bird and the bird will fly and my scent's not there. So the bird's planted and my scent isn't there. And then I'll walk the dog up and around, and once the dog gets that scent, then I'll shoot the bird for the dog and have them retrieve it for me. When you're starting that dog out young, for gun shyness, what I usually do is when they're really eating good, I'll be in another room just so I can see them. And I'll have a pan with me and a big spoon, and I'll bang that, bam. He picks his head up like that and looks at where that was, and I'll keep getting closer and closer and closer to him. And I'll keep doing that every feeding, till I can get right above him. Hang that pan right over him like that, and doesn't pick up his head when it's eating. Then I'll go to a little cap gun, bam. Move closer as long as it doesn't pick up his head. And then from there, I'll go to the 22. You're out there shooting the 22 in the air, working that bird, and you can hear the shot and it doesn't do nothing, then he's pretty good. Should be pretty good then.
Good shot. That bird is. Yes, catch up, Macy. Catch up, Macy. Catch up. That bird. That bird. That bird. Catch it up, Macy. Here. Here, Macy. Here. Where's that bird? Where's that bird? Yeah, that's a good girl. Yeah, good girl. Good girl, eh? Huh? Good girl. Yeah, good girl. Huh?
American woodcock. Always a lot of praise. Always a lot of praise. You bring hot dogs with you. You bring whatever treat they really like with you, you know. And even when you're training heel in the yard, sit, stay, whatever, I always have a lot of praise for the dog. I never scold them. They're doing you a favor by taking you hunting and pointing birds for you. So. A lot of guys, you know, they'll get a dog from me or any dog that they get. They just expect that dog to go out there and start pointing birds. And it's a big process, you know. You have to run your dog and train it every day and work with that dog every day. You just can't expect a dog to put a collar on them or a bell on them and take them out in the woods and start pointing birds or finding birds left and right. It's a long process, and it takes time, and you need to get them out in the woods quite often. And once you get a dog that's trained, like a friend of mine, he had it up for a month and I trained him for a month. And once I give it back to him, I tell him what to work on in the yard and what to do. And he comes back up probably every 2 weeks, and I'll put birds out for them, and we take the dog out in the woods and run them, and just, you got to keep at it, keep training them. Every aspect of it is a training experience for them. A big thing is to get them with older dogs. They see that older dog on point in the woods, and they'll come up and they'll honor that dog. They'll stop behind them, but they have no idea what's going on. But eventually, after time, they'll figure it out why these dogs stopped and why what we're doing this, you know. And that bird goes up and you shoot it, and it's all a long process, you know. It takes probably a good year to 2 years to get a dog to point a bird, or not to point a bird, but, you know, to become a pretty good pointing dog. The pointing instinct is bred in them. The retrieving instinct is bred in them, but you have to work really hard on retrieving. Some dogs are just natural retrievers. They bring them right back to you. Other dogs, you really got to work on retrieving. You're throwing a ball in a hallway so that they can't go anyplace else but back to you. And as far as getting a dog to stop in the woods, that is bred in them too, you know, to back another dog. Most pointing dogs, when they see another dog on point, whenever they see that dog, they'll stop wherever they are and they'll honor that dog's point. Sometimes you get dogs that'll move in, and you got the shot collar, you know, that you need to, you know, give them a little nick, you know, to let them know, hey, you got to stop right there. But most of the time, that's pretty well bred into the dogs that I have anyway, you know, are bred in where they will stop and honor another dog's point. So the name of my kennel is Camp 3 Short Hairs out of Powers. I have a litter probably every 2 years, $350 for a dog. And it comes with their shots, first shots, and cause removed and everything. I don't want to, I'm the kind of guy that I like hunting so much, I want the other person to enjoy it. Don't spend $1,000, $2,000 on a dog, you know. Spend $500, $300 or whatever it is, and you'll have a good pointing dog. The payoff is just to get other people out and enjoy, you know, hunting around a dog. And just get out and see a dog pointing and try getting a bird in the air. So I don't breed to make money. I just breed for the other person to enjoy it. Fresh bear meat, week old. It wouldn't be any kind of a hunting season without food.
So is it about birds, or dogs, food, friends, or sitting around the table at the end of the day with a cold beer talking about all of the above?
The bear killed a steer on me. It was about 2 weeks old. I found it in the field, and then we had permission to shoot him. And my son and I, we waited for him for 3 days. I think it happened on the 28th of March, and then we shot him on the 1st of April. In the morning, we waited just at daybreak. I dropped him down with the 243 behind the front shoulder, and then my son, he shot him in the head. And he says, "What are we going to do, Dad?" I says, "We're going to have to get the tractor." So we went and got the tractor. We had to cut some trees to get him out, but we got him out. And I had him here on the tractor for different things at the tavern, and people go, and they never believed anything like this. It dragged out 535 pounds with the guts out of it. The DNR estimated he'd have been 750 to 800 pounds in the fall.
I think it's about all of that, and I'm sure much more. It's something that we here in the UP affectionately call camp.
Coming up to camp has been something we've been doing for a long time. These guys come up, we have a blast. They're about here for a week or so. Come up on the weekend, typically go out and get some birds. Granted, there are some.
80 degrees outside. Oh, maybe I'll take my long johns off and your long john shirt. I remember that. Keep the heat out.
From playing cards until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, to waking up the next morning to go out and get birds with the dogs. You can't ask for a better weekend, better activity to do. This is the way we like to spend our free time, especially in the fall. You know, 15th rolls around, and you hope and you think about, oh yeah, let's get to camp. You know, let's go up there. When are the guys coming up? When I should go pick up my license today? That kind of stuff. And that's all you can ask for. Kids getting out to hunt, being with their fathers, and being with the dogs, being a bird. That's what bird season's about.